Hello and good morning. This is Rochelle Scouten, the Development Director with the National Bicycle Dealers Association. We are happy to have you with us today for another presentation from Bob Margevicius. We are so glad to have him here with us and share his wisdom. So let's just get started. Thanks for being here, Bob.
Yeah, thanks again. And I guess it's good morning, good afternoon, and even good evening to some of you. And, this is Christmas week, and I certainly appreciate everybody taking the time and being interested enough to listen and participate in this event. So anyway, thanks everybody. I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. And my real my real hope for everyone is that 2021, it continues to see the results that we're seeing, but we're able to live a more normal life, and that the vaccine and some of the other changes that are happening will be a good reflection, and that we'll be able to live a more normal life, and frankly, from my side, I'll be able to travel again. So what I wanted to share with you, I've been in the middle of an I call it an unprecedented time. For those of you who have been listening now for almost a year, I remember when we first started connecting. I guess it was in either March or April, and at the time I was talking about how long this particular pandemic was going to last. I had told you about that we had the perfect storm. We had a lot of things going on, and frankly, at the time in March or April, if you told me that that this particular pandemic, what we are experiencing, would be with us in December of 2020, I probably would have not believed you. But here we are, and here we are. Continued in a pandemic. Here in California, we're in homestay. Restaurants are closed. Most of the stores are closed, and we're having a pretty challenging time from a personal side. But I want to share with you, from the bike side, we're of course still doing exceptionally well. And I was just saying to Brandy and Rochelle before we started, there's a stimulus bill, and the stimulus bill is going to again inject about $600 into every individual who's making under $75,000 a year, and that stimulus the last time that stimulus happened, it also created quite a boom for the bike business. So we may see again another surge, another additional surge that we haven't seen before. But what I wanted to share with you was where things are, what's happening in the supply chain, and I'm going to give you, I'm going to tell you the story, the sob story of my life for the past 8 months. So, I wanted to take you through what things are happening in the business. So let me take you through what's happening right now. I hope everybody can see this. So, what's happening out there today is, this is from NPD. So year to date, IBD bicycle sales are up by 54%, dollar sales are up 72%, and the average selling price is up 12%. Year to date, mass sales are up 45%, dollar sales are up 74%. The average selling price is up 20%. Bike imports, and I think for most of you, you've heard me say this before, about 98% of all bikes sold in the United States are imported. So bike imports are up about 21%. So if you take a look at bike imports year to date are up 21%, and you can see that bicycle unit sales are up between the IBD and the mass, somewhere in the range of about 46 to 47%. So we're looking at a gap between the number of bikes that are imported and the number of bikes that are sold. and that yields inventory levels, and inventory levels at wholesale around the world today are less than 1 month on hand. So the situation is pretty challenging from an inventory standpoint and from an availability standpoint. And from there going on, there's quite a few other things that are happening in the bike business. You know, global component supply purchases and orders are 2 to 3 times what they were in previous years, 2 to 3 times for global component orders, and we'll look a little bit more at that a little later. Component input makers, and that's the Shimano's of the world, or SRAMs, or Tektros, or Lichis. All of those have a very limited ability to scale. And again, I'll talk a little more about that a little later. Some other things that are not necessarily related to that is the US dollar is about 5 to 7% weaker against most foreign currencies. Today, for those of you who follow, you know, the Chinese RMB is trading at 6.54. About 90 days ago, it was somewhere in the range of about 7.0. And the NT dollar today is also extremely strong against the US dollar. It's trading at 28.15, and about 90 to 120 days ago, it was trading somewhere in the range of about 30. So we're seeing close to an 8% change in currencies, as well as Japanese yen, the euro. A lot of the motor supply parts are coming from Europe, and the euro has also seen a pretty significant increase over the 90 to 120 day period of time. We're seeing Section 301 tariff exemptions, and they are set to expire on December 31st. So just in about a little longer than a week, we'll see these Section 301 tariffs exemptions expire, and that will impact China-made bikes. All kids' bikes, which are 24-inch wheel and below, coming from China, will be subject to a 25% Section 301 tariff, and China-made e-bikes will also be subject to a 25% Section 301 tariffs. And there's other components as well, like carbon frames happen to be within that mix, and they too will be subject to a 25% Section 301 tariff. So they will expire. And just a side comment on that, there's a lot of effort to try and continue these exemptions through part of 2021. Sorry, that and I'm mistaken on that. I said the exemptions are set to expire on December 31st, 2020, not 2021. That's my mistake on this slide. And there's been a lot of energy and efforts to try and extend Section 301 tariffs, and a lot of it has to do with there's quite a bit of PPE, the personal protective equipment that's within the Section 301 tariff exemptions. So there's a lot of energy, particularly within Congress and within the Senate, to get the USTR to extend the tariff exemptions. But again, we're only looking at another week or 10 days before those expire. Raw material prices are increasing pretty substantially, and I'll show you a little bit about what's going on with that. So for example, steel prices are up by about 5%. Aluminum prices within the past 90 to 120 days is up close to 10 to 15%. And natural rubber prices are up by about 40%. And, COVID is limiting the labor pool due to safety precautions. So what we're seeing within particularly the assembly and within the component production area, particularly in Asia, where there are a lot of laborers that are brought in from other countries, whether it's from Vietnam or Thailand or Indonesia or Malaysia. These people are now being considered carriers. So the amount of those people that are coming into countries like Taiwan or into Southeast Asia is cut back significantly. So it's limiting the amount of labor they're able to produce, whether it's component parts or whether they're able to produce complete bikes. So that's been a challenge within the past 60 to 90 days. Ocean freight cost, and some of you may have been reading about this, but ocean freight costs have more than doubled in the past 90 days. We were seeing the cost of containers of bikes coming in from Asia into, say, the LA port were somewhere in the area of, say, $1,600 to $1,800. And today they're over 4,000, and 4,000, some of them are up to 5,000. There's just less vessels that are on the water. Those less vessels, they're carrying the same amount of goods, but there's been a high demand for containers coming into the U.S. And it's not only from Asia, it's from Southeast Asia, and it's going around the world. We're seeing the same kind of freight rates increase regardless of whether it's going to Europe, whether it's something that's even leaving from China or Taiwan going to Southeast Asia, or whether it's products, containers that are coming to the USA. And in conjunction with that, there's an amazing container shortage to virtually every destination. So, and that's been really quite a challenge for all of us. Historically, when it's come to ordering containers and getting containers from an assembler or from a component parts maker, it's taken us 1 or 2 days. And today, it's necessary for us to reserve containers going to destinations 3 to 4 weeks in advance, 3 to 4 weeks in advance of what we've been historically accustomed to. So as I said, there's some of these things you're probably reading about, but steel prices are still rising, and margins are soft, so steel prices continue to go up. Aluminum prices are surging as Chinese demand accelerates, so we're starting to see big increases in prices of aluminum. Rubber prices, as I said, increased by almost 40%. A lot of it has to do with automotive, medical, things that, believe it or not, things like latex and latex gloves are important in what's happening with rubber prices. So we're experiencing some big changes in that. And as I said, massive price increases for freight. And the next slide I'm going to show you is, and we're going to pause on this, and I want everybody to just take some time and look at this. So what has all this done, right? What has all this done? So I put together, after some review of some of the components and interfacing with various suppliers along the way, just what's happening with lead times. And historically, lead times for individual components, we could see anywhere from less than 30 days if we were an assembler, up to a maximum of 90 days, So what we're seeing today is we're seeing lead times that are just, unbelievable. And so, for saddles, 300 days, seat posts, 210 days, tires, 270 days, rear cassettes, 180 days, chains, 180 days, derailleurs, 300 days, cranks, 270 days, shock forks, 300 plus days. we're not seeing big changes in e-bike components like motors and batteries. And a lot of that has to do with the big makers of motors and batteries are big companies. You know, Bosch is making motors, as many of you know, for automobiles. So there doesn't seem to be as much of a long lead time on some of the electric bike parts. But on the traditional bike parts, we are seeing some pretty significant increases in lead times. And you know, just as you look at that and you look at us as a brand or as the brands that you're working with, just recognize that this is kind of what we're dealing with today, and how do we contend with it, and what do we do with it. So I'm going to just share with you. So, and this is kind of a short presentation, but you know, and I wanted to share with you what we're all doing, right? So, you know, whether it's Specialized or whether it's any of the other brands of bikes, how are we all dealing with this? And I want to come back and again reiterate that this boom that we're experiencing is not necessarily specific to the US. We're looking at global. And so the global demand is amazingly strong everywhere. And so a lot of these things that we're seeing, the shortages that we're seeing and the limited availability and the long lead times are the results of just the global demand from whether it's Europe, even the China market, Japan, Korea. We're seeing it in Southeast Asia, US, South America. Bike sales and e-bike sales are growing at a really rapid pace. So what are we all doing? And you know, this is just something to reflect on. You know, for most of us, we're placing orders for finished bikes 12 to 18 months from now. So we're placing orders today. And those orders for complete bikes were, I think, out through March or April of 2022. 2022. So we're very far committed out in our purchasing plans. And you know, what are we doing? Some of you probably who know me well know that I've been complaining about this virtually for 8 or 9 months. So every day I'm on the phone from 5 p.m. till roughly 9 p.m. every day, 7 days a week now for almost 9 months, just meeting daily with whether it's bike assemblers or whether it's key component suppliers, just to try and catch up. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that, you know, we're here in the United States, we can't travel, and we're looking to try and see how we can expedite individual components. As everybody knows, if we're missing a chain, we can't build a bike. So we're trying to chase down particularly specific key components that we need in order to meet production and in order to produce and assemble bikes. And so that's been quite taxing, I have to say. And as I said, you know, if you had asked me in February or March whether I anticipated being on the phone daily for 3 or 4 hours a day for 8 months, I probably would never have thought that I'd be doing it, but I am, and many other people are as well. So it's a tough time for us. With the suppliers, we're pressing for efficiency improvements, and we're seeing a lot of that. So what's really happening over this period of time, the factories are getting much better at being efficient, and they're simplifying a lot of their processes. They're improving their flexibility, improving how they process orders, how they produce in a safe way to prevent any type of issues, particularly with the workers. And I've seen some pictures and some movies about how they're protecting the individual workers with plexiglass shields, and how they're protected with masks and with with face shields. So so there's been definitely an improvement in the overall factory efficiency and the safety efforts within the factories. And we're continuing to press on that, whether we're sending them things here from the United States or whether we're helping them with some processes to streamline products, to streamline the offerings, and simplify the products that we have so that they can improve their efficiency. We're definitely strongly encouraging automation, and over the past 60 days, I've seen some amazing investments from some of the factories in automation, and whether they're improving in forging or whether they're improving in finishing or whether they're improving in their final preparation and packaging. But we're seeing automation come in, so that's a good thing, and we're seeing the results of that. We're paying extra for overtime work. There's a lot of, since the factory orders, as I said, are 2 to 3 times greater than they were. So the factories are working overtime, and we're out, encouraging that. We're trying to make sure that the labor practices and the procedures that are done at the factories are in alignment with what the international standards are, and we're working together to try and work overtime as needed to try and get production of whether it's component parts or whether it's complete bikes. We're air freighting critical components into assemblers, and there's been a lot of that. If we need some Shimano derailleurs, or we need some brake levers, or disc brakes or calipers, we're air freighting as necessary critical components to try and get them to the assemblers so that we can produce complete bikes. And so that too has been on our radar for ways to improve the throughput and to try and get production and get bikes shipped. We're substituting. We're not doing a whole lot of substituting. I know there may be some companies that are doing more than others, but particularly on lower valued products, we're seeing a lot of opportunities where we can substitute individual components one for another, where it may meet all the CPSC and all the government requirements that we have globally. So where possible, we're trying to make substitutions so that we can move into production. And we are working on with key suppliers to try and increase the capacity. And this has really been a struggle. And just a little background on that, we're challenged with a lot of the key suppliers are looking at what's happening in the marketplace. And they realize, and they've communicated to all of us, that the fact that an investment today in additional capacity or in a new facility or in a new operation in a new country, it's going to take them 2 to 3 years before that facility is up, running, and servicing the market. And in many of these instances, these are big investments, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 million. And they're looking at all of us in the bike industry to see how does this bike boom that we're seeing, is there staying power? And are we looking at a change in trend of behavior of people, so that they can make those investments confidently, so that in that 2 or 3 years, whatever that increase in capacity that they're building for, that it's going to be able to meet the needs, and it's not, and that what we're seeing now, this continued behavior change, is going to remain in play for years to come. And we, in the bike business, all of us have been encouraging the suppliers to invest and to believe that we are in a state where we are seeing increases and changes in behavior. And we all believe that that what we're seeing now, that the demand is going to continue. And for those of you, some of you may have participated in a webinar. I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago that was put on by one of the other industry organizations. The European community is anticipating that by 2030, the number of e-bikes and bikes sold in the European community will be double what the number of cars that are sold, double what the number of cars that are sold. And we here in America, we anticipate that sales between e-bikes and traditional pedal bikes will also grow significantly by 2030. And we're projecting that we're going to see a international demand for bikes between the US and the European community of over 50 million bikes, and currently we're somewhere in the range of between 38 and 40. So we're all looking at some big increases, and so we're looking to suppliers to increase capacity. And lastly, for those of you who know Specialized and a lot of the other brands, we're still investing in innovation, and we still believe that there's the need for innovation in the marketplace. We still need to fuel the interest. We need to fuel the increases in selling prices. We need to provide the user with an amazing experience. So all of us are continuing to invest in innovation, and we really believe that that's still a driver and an important part of this bike business. So I've taken up about 30 minutes of your time, and I wanted to just say, okay, I want to conclude with, okay, is there light at the end of this tunnel? After all the things that I've said. So, and maybe, I don't really know, maybe. What I can tell you is now, and I'll get to this, but I can tell you right now that global demand is showing no signs of slowing down today. So we're continuing to see this pace that we're seeing right now. It's just continuing. And we may see that their weather may play a role to change demand patterns. We don't really know that. And historically, for those of us who have been in the bike business for a long time, weather historically can play a major role in changing demand patterns. And we don't know what the weather's going to be like, but that we just have to be aware of, and that could change things. As the pandemic forces home quarantines, the use and demand may continue to rise. We anticipate that will be the case. And as I said, stimulus bill just passed, it's $600 per person. That too could continue to spur demand. And as I mentioned, component makers and bike factories are working 24/7 to meet the current demand. And a lot of them are redlining, and we're trying to take that into consideration on ways that we can relieve that. But we're in a state where those component factories and bike assembly factories are really working hard. As I said in the very beginning, there's no excess capacity to be able to replenish on-demand inventory. So I think in the first slide I was sharing with you, we look at somewhere the inventory, at least at the wholesale level, is about 1 month or less. So 1 month or less means that the on-demand inventory that we had before is not necessarily going to be available. And just a side comment on that, a year ago, just to give you a flavor of this, a year ago, from the independent bicycle retailer side and from the wholesale sell-in side, that's from the brands, Specialized, Trek, Giant, Cannondale. There was roughly about 600,000 units of inventory available, 600,000 units of inventory available about a year ago. And today, that inventory level is roughly 70,000. And you can imagine of that 70,000, some of them are bikes that are, may not even be saleable. So there's really no inventory available for that on-demand needs that historically the independent bicycle retailer has relied on. And I think that what we're seeing from our side is everything that comes in goes out immediately. And so with very little opportunity to replenish that inventory. And my outlook for it is it's going to be 12 to 18 months before there's any on-demand inventory available. That's considering that there may be a little slowdown, we may be able to increase the output by improving the efficiency, improving the productivity, and that we may be able to replenish some of the inventory that we have, but it's going to take quite some time. And the bottom line on it is, this is the new normal. And this is the new normal, and it's probably going to be this way for the next 12 to 18 months. So, so that's it for me. I just wanted to thank everybody for listening, and I'm available to anybody for any comments or questions that may relate to this. And I hope it was insightful and helpful to everybody.
Perfect. We do already have questions that have come through. So if you're ready to get started with those questions.
Let's do it.
All right. First question, what is the percentage of Chinese bicycle imports of total US imports?
So it's kind of a moving target. Historically, when the Section 301 tariffs hit, the number was 94%. 94. Over the past, and that was in September of 2018. And we have seen that number decline. Right now, it's around 87%. And I think that you have to take into consideration the 87%. If you look, and a lot of the imports that are coming into the United States are still from China because of the Section 301 tariff exemptions. So a large portion of imports into the United States are kids' bikes. So somewhere in the area of about 87% of the imports are from China.
All right. When you say lead time, is that from the time the PO is placed to when the components arrive at the factory? If so, what is the OEM lead time to assemble and ship?
So that's a good question. The lead times that I shared with you are Specialized places an order, and we place an order to our assembler. Our assembler then places an order to the component maker. So the component maker, whether it's Shimano, whether it's SRAM, whether it's Tektro, RockShox. So those lead times are the lead times for the component makers are providing to the assembler or to the producer. And as I said, historically, those have been somewhere between, they've been as short as 20 to 25 days, and usually somewhere in the area of 45 to 60 days. So we're seeing a long extension in those. And in answer to your question, the assembly process, once the components come in, as long as all the components are available, they can build bikes. They can build and assemble bikes right away. So there's not a lot of time today, particularly with the lack of components. There's not a lot of inventory that the assemblers, the producers, the Giants or Maritas of the world have on hand that they're waiting for individual components. Everything that's coming in is being shipped out. And I'll just explode a little bit on that particular comment that, most of the time the assemblers are, they're actually scheduling in all the individual components to coincide with the longest lead time items. So if the longest lead time item, say, is 300 days, they would be placing orders for the individual components to coincide with that so that everything comes in together. And so the bicycle assemblers, the last thing they want to do is have components on hand that maybe they can get in 60 or 90 days and have to wait another 150 or 200 days until they get the rest of the components. So and remember, those components that are coming in, they have to pay for them. So they're pretty good at organizing and managing so that when the components come in, they all come in at a similar time, and that they're assembling that finished bike when all the components come in.
All right. Just as a reminder to everybody watching, if you just type in your questions, these are the ones that we're reading off. So we got a few more here. If the bike brands are encouraging investment in increased capacity, what are the bike brands doing to invest in the industry and the expanding market over and above innovation?
Well, I think that a lot of us are doing a lot of things. We're looking at investments that we're making in conjunction with People for Bikes. I'm speaking in general, not specifically for Specialized. We're investing overseas in the European market as well, in building infrastructures in organizations like CIE, or ECF, European Cycling Federation, CONAB, WBIA. There's a lot of investments that all of us are making in building infrastructure and supporting the bike industry through various industry organizations from an advocacy standpoint, as well as from supporting it in ways that we believe are going to continue to maintain the behavior that we're seeing today.
All right, now we've got a question from Charlie McCorkle. How much of an increase will raw product increases, falling dollar, and transportation increase affect final price? Will eliminating tariffs affect this?
Charlie, I wish I had a crystal ball on that. What I can tell you is we're trying as best as we can to try and keep it at a minimal, but I don't want to give you an exact percentage, but I can tell you that I think that this year you are going to see some pretty significant increases in overall purchase prices, particularly for 2022 models, which will be coming out sometime around April or May. And I say that, the increase in costs that we're seeing, some of it we're not passing on, some of it we're absorbing. I mean, we're in a good state at this moment, but I think that we're going to start seeing some of those things passed on into retail. And one of the things I had mentioned this to Brandy, I guess about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, in my discussions with a lot of retailers, that consumers today seem to be accepting of the cost of bikes. I know in the many years that I've been involved in the bike business, we've had I'll just call it a lack of respect, and people don't really appreciate the value of what the bike is and what it costs. And over this period of 8 months, we've seen an amazing change. People seem to be willing to spend. I was just looking, the average retail sell-through was just over $1,000, according to NPD, through the month of October, and that's quite a bit different than it was before. So it seems like consumers are willing to pay more. They're willing to appreciate the value of what the product is. And Charlie, in answer to your question, is there price elasticity in bikes? I don't know, but I think you're going to start to see whether there is price elasticity as some of these cost increases affect us and impact us immediately. And there are increases in prices, and whether it's Section 301 tariffs or whether it's component cost increases or whether it's exchange rates or whether it's ocean freight, but they're all going to come into play. And I think you're going to see that reflected in 2020, maybe late 2021 models and 2022.
All right, I think you just generally hit on this, but I'll ask the question just in case there's something that you want to mention. How do you expect increased costs to be shared between manufacturers, dealers, and consumers? One manufacturer just hit us with a big increase on a 2-container order that we have a contract and deposit on.
Wow, that's in answer to that, I'm not sure. I think that every company is going to have their own different strategy on it, and for most of the people on this call know me, I'm quite aggressive. I mean, we're trying to minimize the cost at any cost changes as best as we possibly can, and keep it as low as possible. And I think the challenge for all of us, which you're probably going to hear from any of the brands that you're working on, is in many instances we're being held hostage. There's not that, since the demand is so high for individual components or for bikes or for ocean freight containers or just getting containers, that there's a lot of the component makers and the freight companies are saying, look, you don't want to accept the price increase, that's fine. We have 10 other people waiting in line. So we are dealing with those things diplomatically on a day-to-day basis, but it's at this moment it's just a fact of life, and how everybody shares it in between the makers, that's up to, I think, brand by brand.
All right. Are the bikes coming out of Vietnam and Cambodia assembled there with Chinese frames and components, or are they manufactured there?
But for the most part, they're manufactured in Cambodia. I don't see a lot of bikes coming out of Vietnam. At least we haven't seen very many bikes coming out of Vietnam. But yeah, Cambodia, from Cambodia, the bikes and the frames are assembled there, and the components are coming from around the world. Whether they're coming from Japan or whether they're coming, Shimano has a facility in the Philippines. They have one in Indonesia. They have one in Malaysia. They have, of course, they're one in Japan. They have one in China. So components are coming from various different places, and for the most part, the frames are produced in Cambodia or Vietnam or anywhere in Southeast Asia, and they are assembled there and they're shipped here to the United States. And there are various government regulations and provisions that we all need to comply with, that require country of origin certification and those kinds of things. And so we're all pretty clean on those things, and we're in compliance with all the government regulations for CBP, the Customs and Border Patrol.
How does the industry get a handle on who and how many bikes dealers get? Meaning, how do we eliminate sales reps from playing bike gods? The small IBD will start going out of business if it isn't regulated.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. And I'd love to be a fly on the wall when those subjects happen. But my role at particularly at Specialized is to take care of the supply side, so I'm not really looking at who's and how things are distributed amongst retailers. But I think that it's an admirable thing, and I don't have a wonderful answer for it. So I apologize for that.
All right. How will companies be allocating components to balance parts needed for full bikes and what is needed for shops to sell for repairs, upgrades, etc.?
From what I've heard, and in my discussions with some of the component makers, whether it's Shimano or SRAM, they're still servicing aftermarket parts needs. So and their advice to me and my advice to everyone who's looking at that is place orders with those component makers. They don't cancel them, and they do ship them, and they do take back orders. So much the same as you're experiencing with Complete Bikes, they're in exactly the same situation. You know, they're looking at long lead times for individual components, and you know, the best advice I have is to place orders, and they'll provide you with what they anticipate to be the ship date that you're going to get, and they do back order. So I would encourage you to just order and get in that queue and get in the bucket for what comes in.
All right, we are out of questions for now. So if anybody has any more questions coming up in the morning or this afternoon, send them to us at info@nbda.com. We'll send them off to Bob, or we'll answer them, and we'll get you an answer. So thank you so much for being with us, Bob.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for listening. And I wish everyone just a wonderful holiday season, and a great and prosperous 2021. So anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope to be with you again for 2021 with some other updates and other things going on from the supply side.
Certainly, we look forward to it. And reminder, if you are not an NBDA member, we would love to have you. Just go to nbda.com and join there. All right, thanks so much.
All right, bye.